Siddha Yoga Correspondence Course, Lesson 15. I'm going to go ahead and read this and then listen to it during the week. See how that works, that little project. So, dear one, once again, we're able to meet here in the space of the printed page. At least it appears to be the printed page. Actually, when we tune into a lesson, we meet in the inner space, the space of the heart. This is where our love and life blend and merge, where we are one. We can share this space all the time, whether we're physically near or not. It is a space beyond space, transcending any particular place. Although it vibrates in the innermost heart, it is also all-pervasive. It is the space of our own awareness. When we give this inner space a name, we call it the self. And as Baba said, the sensation of the self is love. Traditionally, when a seeker goes to a spiritual master, one of the first things the master must do is break down the way the seeker sees the world. So many things happen in Siddha Yoga merely to break down our limiting or conditioned way of seeing things. The Guru tends to relate to us in a way that transforms our vision and expands our perspective. Of course, the mind has its own opinions about what is going on, and the ego has its own reaction to all these things that appear to happen. But what is really happening behind all these appearances is that our vision is being rearranged. Even as you read these lessons, you may have all sorts of opinions and reactions about what you read. You may even agree or disagree with what you read. Still, something is happening beyond the level of mental activity. It usually takes a while for a person to realize that the course does not take place on an intellectual level alone. Oh, there is plenty of entertainment for the mind, plenty for the mind to chew on and muse about. But the inner process happens far beyond the mind. Your perspective of things is being subtly expanded, and it has nothing to do with the words you're reading, except that through making the effort to read the words, you are agreeing to participate in the process. This course is a certain form that sadhana can take. For some people, it complements many other things they do and serves to explain many of the processes that are happening for them. For other people, it becomes the primary means through which they participate in Siddha Yoga. The process within the course goes so far beyond the writer and the reader. The words arise from consciousness and dissolve back into consciousness again. There is really no duality in the communication. The process happens as though there were only one of us. The words exist on paper merely as a means for bringing us back into that space of the heart. For this reason, we reread the lessons, not to learn what the words mean, but to tune back into the self we all share. Strangely, it really doesn't matter how you approach the course or how you choose to participate. For most people, the ideal approach is to refer to the current lesson daily and to read the review lesson at least once. Naturally, not everyone participates in the course in this way. For example, one person's primary relationship with the course seemed to be writing letters to me apologizing for not reading the lessons and giving reasons why there isn't enough time to read them. So this is one form of participation. Of course, I'm not affected by whether the lessons are read or not. The important thing is that the writer of the letters has formed a relationship and is actively participating in the course. Even though these words seem directed to the intellect, they are only to entertain the intellect so that something deeper can happen. This is why it doesn't matter whether a beginner or old-timer reads the lesson. A lesson can be read or experienced in whatever level of understanding any reader brings to it, because there is a space in which the reader and writer are one. There is only one consciousness perceiving and understanding these words. The words could just as well arise from your own inner voice. The Shakti simply presents them in this form for us all to share. There is a space which we all share simultaneously. This space is awareness. We may call it consciousness. We may call it this space love, There is only one love. Ordinarily, we tune into that love from time to time, or we get glimpses of it and shout, "Oh, I'm in love, I'm in love." But the same love is always fully present, whether we're aware of it or not. We contain the capacity to be in love all the time. When we understand the truth, we experience that we are never really apart. We are never really separate from each other. Just as a sleeping person does not see that his dream is only a dream, a person unaware of the truth cannot see how we could possibly be one. It is something which cannot be thought or communicated to someone intellectually. The experience or recognition of it can apparently be transmitted from one to another, but only through the power of the Shakti and not through words. Words in themselves can never contain the truth. For this reason, many lessons may seem to be written incoherently, as though one sentence or paragraph doesn't quite go with the next. Everything is not neatly structured for the mind. We need to learn to connect ideas together in a new way. We have to learn to see the right connections and relationships between things. Learning to do this takes us beyond the ordinary mind altogether and must go beyond the ordinary mind in order to be free. When we understand that we are essentially the same as everyone else, we begin to live in a different world from those who continue to see everyone as separate. We relate to people differently when we see them as the same as ourselves, and we do if we see them as different from ourselves. A person who sees himself in others feels as though everyone is his secret friend. He naturally and spontaneously relates to others as though they have been buddies for a lifetime. No one is really a stranger to him because he knows how each person is on the inside. In a sense, he is in love with everyone. He sees everyone as his beloved, even though there may be very little external karma between them. Just because we have very little karma with the person in this lifetime does not mean we are very close to each other subtly. There is a realm of existence which is composed of personalities. In this realm of personalities, all personalities exist like a circus of cartoon characters. Ordinarily, however, we see personalities as being who people are, and we relate to people and feel about people according to their personalities. Some personalities awe us, some intimidate us, some make us feel uncomfortable, some entertain us, others attract us, and so forth. A person who begins to perceive the truth can gradually see beyond this realm of personalities altogether. Although he does see what the personalities are doing, he doesn't give them any importance. He no longer reacts to personality. He no longer dislikes personalities, and he is no longer entranced by them. Another's personality becomes irrelevant for him. He sees that the personality is not who a person is. He simply sees and relates to the self within. This subject is very complex and very subtle. We will go into it more fully in later lessons. You will see that there is much that can be known about what happens between people that is not ordinarily known. There are ways of perceiving and understanding things which are totally beyond anything we have imagined. But first we must build a strong foundation. So we think we are this person and that our particular personality somehow has something to do with who we are. We think we did such and such, and we've done some bad things and some good things, that we've made mistakes and wrong decisions and suffered certain consequences from all that, and so on and so on. We think certain things happen to us, that since these things happen to us, they must be important, and that since they are important, we should take them seriously. All this would be enough in itself, but in addition, we also think we are this body, which was born at a certain time, is of a certain sex, is in a certain state of health, and will eventually die. We also think that we are what we think, and we feel that we are what we feel. This is the state of the ordinary individual. All this is what we refer to as the ego. Basically, the ego is what identifies itself with being this particular person with all its traits and characteristics, including faults, flaws, and limitations. The ego feels bad. The ego gets depressed. The ego gets angry. The ego has opinions. The ego likes some things and dislikes other things. The ego judges other people and itself as though it knows what is best, what is right and wrong. Of course, the ego always thinks it is right, always thinks it sees everything from the correct perspective. In fact, the ego feels that just because it thinks something, it must be true. For this reason, arrogance, pride, and the feeling of self-importance also come within the realm of the ego. It takes a long time to see and understand the ego for what it is, and especially to recognize the ego and what it's doing at the time it's doing it. Right now, we have certain understanding of the ego, and it might be considerably broader than our understanding of the ego before we began the course. Still, a year from now, we may look back and see that our present understanding of the ego was quite primitive. One's perspective expands as the ego diminishes. When the ego is quite solid and in control of things, everything is seen and understood through the perspective of the ego. As a person does some sadhana and the ego begins to shrink, the perspective gets broader and deeper. The same things which were understood before can be perceived in a new way once the ego has shrunk just a little bit. So even our right understanding of the ego is dependent on our freedom from the ego. Becoming free from the ego is a gradual process. It can't happen overnight. If a person were suddenly stripped of his ego, he would totally panic. It must be a gradual process. Otherwise, the realization that he is not who he thought he was could be overwhelming. So, over a period of time, certain things happen to him and he goes through certain experiences which are like peeling off layer after layer of the ego. Such experiences are all under the control of the Shakti. In most cases, we have no idea what is actually happening or why, until we see in retrospect the effects it has on us. The effects of something are a lot more real than the appearance of something, or what we think about it at the time. Sometimes we may think something is silly or stupid or completely irrelevant to us, and later we may see that it keyed some major transformation or understanding. Sometimes we even think something terrible is happening. But afterwards, we will see that the overall consequences were quite beneficial. We don't know what is necessary to correct our wrong vision and our limited understanding. If we knew what was necessary, our vision and understanding would not be wrong or limited. So we go through the transformation process. Things happen to us. We undergo experiences. We come into relationships with certain people, all of which affect us in ways we are not consciously aware of. We think one thing is happening while actually something entirely different is going on. Only a person with very refined understanding always sees things for what they really are. Most of us, even those of us who have done sadhana for a long time, are still quite addicted to appearances. We still get caught up in the play of personalities. We are lost in a world of constant change, never aware of the eternally changeless. One reason we participate in this course is to refine our understanding and to become free from our limited conditioning. A person who wants to go all the way on this path must be willing to change the way he thinks and feels, or at least follow the truth wherever it leads him. No progress can be made as long as we feel we are already right about everything. Instead of relying on our thoughts and opinions, which really have nothing to do with us anyway, we need to recognize and understand what is beyond the activity of the mind, what sees and knows all inner and outer activity, and what we all share simultaneously and equally. A person may think that sadhana is only meditation and chanting and repeating the mantra, but true sadhana consists of those experiences one goes through which gradually free him from the limitation of the ego. A person can't do anything on his own to get free from the ego because it is the ego itself which would make the effort to do so. The ego would say, well, I'll do sadhana and get free from my ego, then I'll be liberated. This is only another ego trip. This is why the guru is necessary. Once a person enters into some form of relationship with the guru, the Shakti takes care of everything. We don't have to worry about it anymore. We do our part by simply practicing the guru's teachings. The awareness of the inner self is the true spiritual life and the only spiritual life there is. People do many things, often torturing themselves in the name of spirituality. But the only thing truly spiritual is the awareness of the self and seeing the self in everything. A person may perform rituals and practices, but without the awareness of the self, they are empty actions. If a person sees the self in everyone and everything, then everything is spiritual to him. He spiritualizes his universe through his own pure vision, regardless of how anyone else sees him or what motives they ascribe to his actions. He reveals in the self all the time. He revels in the self all the time. Spirituality is not only a matter of actions or beliefs, it is a matter of one's own inner awareness. The true spiritual life has no form, no ritual, no tradition to uphold, no precedent to follow. It is not a lifestyle, a way of doing or not doing things, or a particular form of behavior acceptable to other spiritual people. Then it would only be another form of society. Spirituality has no rules. There are no set ways of doing or not doing things. Our concept of spirituality is so narrow and rigid. All these distinctions between what is spiritual and unspiritual exist only in the mind. Beyond the mind is the pure awareness of the self, and the awareness of that is spirituality. Of course, there are practices given by the guru which are effective in burning away the samskaras that compose the ego. So we meditate, we chant, we repeat the mantra, and we do the other things because they are time-proven methods for purifying and stabilizing the mind. The practices have their own great value. However, performing the practices in themselves does not make a person spiritual. A person who takes great pride in all the practices he performs is only on a spiritual ego trip. A person becomes spiritual only when he gives up the pride of performing all these actions. In later lessons, we will discuss how it is ultimately essential that we go completely beyond all sense of performing good actions or bad actions, and beyond the pride and guilt associated with such actions. One can become a good yogi in the same way that one becomes an engineer or lawyer or a football player. Yet this is not the aim of spiritual life. Becoming a yogi is not itself the end of the goal. There is no value in becoming a good meditator or a great chanter if one does not develop the vision of seeing the oneself in all. Ultimately, one has to go beyond being a yogi and beyond yoga itself. In true spirituality, there is great equality consciousness. The same self dwells equally in everything. It does not lie only in spiritual things, for everything is equally spiritual once we know the self. Pride in one's yoga is very common during the first couple of years in sadhana. There's no reason to be conceited about doing sadhana. If we think we are somehow better or higher than those who don't do sadhana, then it's only become part of the ego. It is a spiritual pride. It is much better to be humble. Humility can be a person's greatest asset. It will carry him through everything. A person can become a very great yogi, but if he lacks true humility, then he is looking for a fall. Our sadhana must be balanced. In the beginning, we tend to think of sadhana as primarily the practices. Actually, the real sadhana is how we live our moment-to-moment lives. What good does it do to meditate every day if we're not going to make some effort to see everything as a play of consciousness and to see the self in everyone? Of what use is yoga if we lack the inner love? Through the inner love, the highest state is easily attained, whether we ever understand any of these words or not. Guru Mani once said, "Through that love, we exist. It is this love which gives us everything. So do not create all these things. It is so easy to create a web. It is so much easier to live in your own illusion. What is hard is to get out of that illusion. Indulging in illusions is much easier. Becoming free from your illusion is very difficult. Therefore, do not create more illusions. When you sit for meditation, meditate for that love. Meditate in that love. Then, no matter how your body is positioned, what you will experience is that incredible love. And love is the goal. As you meditate with love, there is no question, there is no problem, there is no pain. Because every question, every problem, and every pain has become that love. Meditation is stopping yourself from going on and on with your illusions. Meditating is not just removing the stress of the mind or the body. It is removing the stress of the entire being simultaneously. It is becoming free from it. Meditation is stopping yourself from going on about your illusions. When you stop your illusions, what you experience is love, because you are not entangled, you're not choked, you're not suffocated with your intellectual stuff or mental stuff or the bodily stuff. You are free from them. When you are free from all the conditions, you experience the truth. You experience great love within yourself. Why does it take a long time to experience love, to experience the truth? A great writer said, "It is because we're all label makers. We love the labels more than the content," he said. Life is like heady wine. Everyone reads the label on the bottle. Hardly anyone tastes the wine. This is why it takes longer to know the truth, to know love. We are mainly interested in the label, what is written on the outside, what the eyes see on the outside, what the ears hear from the outside, what the hands feel from the outside, and all this becomes a barrier. Yet we think all this is a vehicle. Even when something actually moves our heart, we say, "Wait, let me understand it first." Have you not given yourself that command over and over again, whether it is when you're falling in love, whether it is with the love of a child? You say, "Wait, my heart, I will understand it first, and then I will let you know whether you should go in for it or not." Do not wait. When it is there, experience it. Whatever happens must happen anyhow. Why not experience it when it is there? If we wait, that can take age after age, century after century. In that waiting, there is forgetfulness. You can be sidetracked. So when it is there, go for it. When it is the truth, when it is love, it is the truth and it is love. There is no deception. Guru Mai's approach to sadhana is very simple. For her, it is the simple path of love. Everything else exists for our benefit. If we live absorbed in that love, everything else is irrelevant. It is only because we're not already firmly established in the inner love that everything else is necessary. All the practices and techniques serve the purpose of freeing us from the samskaras, or the false subconscious conditioning, which prevents us from spontaneously and naturally seeing the truth and experiencing that love as we are. The love is already within us. It is never absent. However, the samskaras, the ego, prevent us from experiencing that love all the time. We are conditioned to think that love can be experienced only under special conditions, while in reality, love is supremely independent and unconditional. Nothing has the power to delete it. So is our false conditioning, which must be purified. I don't personally like this word impure, because it implies that there is something basically impure about us, while the truth is that we are absolutely pure. Still, the word is commonly used, so we should understand what is actually being referred to. When references are made of our impurities, we can substitute the Sanskrit term samskaras, and we will get a clearer, more objective idea of what is meant. The only impurity is that which prevents us from seeing and experiencing our own truth. This is what is purified. The crux of sadhana has to do with breaking free from the samskaras. In later lessons, we will go into this in detail. The purification process merely cleans away the obstruction in our vision and understanding. It is like cleaning a window so that we can see through it clearly. Still, the window is always what it is. It never becomes impure. There is no such thing as sin. If you feel that you have committed sins in your past, forget it. The only sin is the consciousness of sin. The feelings of doing good or bad actions come from the ego. Don't think of yourself as good or bad. That is only another limiting concept. We do experience karma corresponding to our actions and especially to our motives behind those actions, but we're not punished for sins. There is no reason to feel guilty over past actions. Baba used to say that the guilt is much worse than the actions. What happened in the past is over. It was karma. We should forget it. Guilt continues into the present and affects us now. Two things we must be free from are guilt and blame, whether we blame ourselves or others. Guilt and blame bind us in their own prison. Be firmly established in your own purity and your conviction that only the Shakti acts through you. Do not doubt yourself. Don't depend on someone else to tell you that what you're doing is right. You can invariably depend on the guidance of the Shakti from within, whether you call it intuition, conscience, or any other word. It arises as the feeling of rightness, and it is uplifting and inspiring. Any doubt or hesitation is only the interference of the mind or ego. Refuse to accept negative suggestions or opinions from others. Your feelings of inner rightness must not depend on approval or positive feedback from someone else. Guru Mai has said, "You do not please God when you please others. You please God when you please yourself." There will always be people who criticize and challenge whatever you do. The more true you are to your own nature, the more others may outwardly seem to disapprove of you. We are tested in many ways, and very rarely do we recognize tests for what they are. Many of the greatest beings who have lived on this earth have been totally unacceptable to society. Many of them were persecuted. If everyone in your life thinks you are doing just great, you can be sure that your life is mediocre. You may even go through a period in your life where everyone seems to be against you, when everyone thinks you're wrong. Even so, you must be true to your own self. You must do what feels right in your heart. You won't be affected unless you allow their words to influence your own thoughts and yourself. As Baba once put it, let the dogs bark. The outer world is a strange and mysterious phenomenon. There appear to be so many others, but in truth it is the same self playing all these roles. Seeing the same self in everyone, we can sport with others lovingly and playfully while being spontaneously appropriate. Even if they disapprove of us or criticize us, we can go along with the game. We don't have to get mad. We don't have to react. There is no reason to make waves. We don't have to prove to anyone that we are right. Our downfall can be caused by our insatiable desire for others to know that we are right. We don't have to convince anyone of anything. No one ever has to agree with us. If anyone sees us as strange or weird, that's fine. The only important thing is to be true to ourselves. Then we can play our rightful part in this drama of life. This is Dharma, and this is living a good life. Baba once said, lead your life with great joy, with great love, being free from hatred and enmity, and also from the notion of high and low. This entire world is the play of universal consciousness. Once you have the understanding that everyone is you, then you see the light of consciousness everywhere. Then a smile blossoms on your face. Give up your habit of looking at others' lives. Look at your own life. Perceive your own inner joy. The self, the actor, is within everyone. All faces belong to him. All names are his. All forms are his. He has become everyone's dear friend. When you perceive this truth, you will experience great lightheartedness. Then the false therapies, the dreamlike improvements, and the games of the mind will leave you. Then wherever you look, you will see your own self. Wherever you turn through the mirror of the universe, your own reflection will come back at you. Then you will say, "Oh, I am all." And this was the object of your search throughout countless lifetimes and births, to understand that all these forms are nothing but your own self. Love, signed by Ram.